digital signal processing in real life application. I take this opportunity to welcome all of you to this program. First of all, I would like to invite Dr. David Thatch Matthew, Principal UC College, to this session. Welcome, sir. Next, I am pleased to invite today's resource person, Mr. Sriraj KP, who is working as Assistant Professor, Department of Electronics Engineering, Government Polytechnic College, Kottakkal. Welcome, sir, and we are eagerly waiting for your session. Next, I would like to invite our HOD, Mr. Agil TV, working as Assistant Professor in UC College. Welcome, sir, to today's program. Now I request Agil, sir, to introduce our resource person to the participants.
Good morning to all. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our resource person, Mr. Sriraj KP. Mr. Sriraj is working as Assistant Professor at Department of Electronics Engineering, Government Polytechnic College, Kottakkal. He is currently pursuing PhD in the area of hyperspectral image processing from SVNIT Surat. He had a teaching experience of almost 30 years in technical education and guided a lot of projects in both UG and PG courses. Participants, please mute your mic. He had also published 10 journals and conference papers in signal processing domain. He had also chaired many conferences and invited as resource person for many FTPs. Now I invite Mr. Sridhar sir to this webinar.
So thank you, Agil sir, for this wonderful introduction. And first of all, I want to thank the UC College and especially the department inviting me for a webinar. And we can start the session. So good morning, everyone. So as we all know, that today's webinar topic is impact of digital signal processing in real life applications. So what the outcome of the course, what we are expecting at the end of this session is that we'll be having an overview on which are the real life applications in which DSP is having an impact. And at the end, I'm sure that we'll be so in each and every field of real life, there is DSP. So before getting into the applications, we can just see what you mean by digital signal processing in simple terms. As we all know, there's a difference between digital and analog. And digital means it is operating by the use of a digital signals to represent data in the form of numbers. So analog means we'll be having a lot of data. Digital means we'll be converting after sampling and quantization, we'll be having a lot of numbers in that. So in DSP, we'll be mainly dealing with digital numbers. And second term in DSP is signal. And as we all know, signal is any parameter that is varying with respect to any another parameter. Mainly the independent parameter will be time in this case. And signals can be acquired from all the real-time applications that we are having right now. So third term in DSP is processing. Processing, as we all know, it's a set of operations performed. And for performing the operations, we require some processing unit for that. So in a nutshell, we can simply tell that DSP is changing or analyzing information, which is measured as discrete sequences of numbers. Now coming to simple definition of signal, the signal describes how some physical quantities varies over time or space. So a lot of time signals are available. A lot of signals are available in the real world. Like we can have a sound signal. Just as I am speaking right now, this is simply a signal which is varying with respect to time. Similarly, one-dimensional signals are there, like a lot of biomedical signals like ECG, EEG, etc. And we can have two-dimensional signal like an image. An image is having two dimensions. So we can't call it as a time, we can simply take it as a space. And three-dimensional signal that we are familiar is a video signal, because video, as we all know, it is having a frame rate, and generally it's 25 frames per second. We know that rate also. So video means it can be taken as a set of images which is varying with respect to time. So since image is having two-dimensional, if I'm adding a third dimension time also in that, that will be converted into a video signal. So whatever we are seeing in our in our real time or in our real world is actually signals. Apart with that, we can take some other examples also. This, even though this can be considered as a graph, this is again actually called as a signal because it shows the sound level of, say, wind, drizzle, rain, etc., varying with respect to frequency. We can have another representation also. This shows uh, the variation of the temperature, salinity, pressure, conductivity, etc., when the depth is increasing in the seabed. So this also can be considered in that particular way. Now, as we have just seen what you mean by a signal, we can just see what is signal processing. It is a process of manipulating a signal to change its characteristics or exact information. So this is for performing that, we need some domain for that. So it can be performed using a computer simply. If you are taking a computer, we can process the signals. Otherwise, we can have specially integrated circuits. As you all know, there are dedicated circuits for processing digital signals called digital signal processors or digital signal controllers. With the help of that also, we can perform the processing of signals. And also, we can have analog integrated circuits also, which will take a particular input and uh, signal as the input, and we will get the processed output. Now, we can see uh, a block diagram at the top, a simple representation of a DSP system. It will take an analog input, process it, and it will give an analog output itself. If you're looking at the different stages, there will be an analog filter which will be converting that analog input into a band limited signal. Band limited signal means it will be taking only a particular range of frequencies. So filters, as we all know, there may be it can be a low pass filter, high pass filter, or any band pass filters. And to convert an analog signal into a digital signal, we'll be passing it through an analog to digital converter, which is an ADC. So the analog input is being converted into a digital signal, and there are dedicated processors called DSP processors for processing the digital signal, which will give a pre-processed signal as the output. And since this processed output is still a digital signal, and we require an analog output at the end of that, we need a digital to analog converter. So DAC will convert the processed digital signal into an output signal, and at the end stage, we will be having a reconstruction filter to have a better analog output at the end. That is the processing block diagram of a DSP, and the lower block diagram shows the almost a similar thing, but the only difference is that it can be done in the case of a communication. So we'll be having a signal, that is, I am transmitting a space signal. The space signal is since I require convert that into an electronic signal or an electric signal, we require a transducer. And if I'm taking a sound signal, the mic will be acting as a transducer, which is converting that sound signal into an electrical signal. And we require some electronic processors which will process the corresponding output of the transducer, which may be either a voltage or either a current. And then we are giving it to a transmitter. The transmitter will convert that into an electromagnetic wave. The electromagnetic wave will transmit through any of the medium, like a coaxial cable or optical fiber or through free space. It will reach the receiver. The receiver, we are receiving the electronic signal. We require another transducer over there which converts this electrical signal back into audio signal. So this is the way in which generally any DSP system is going to work. The upper one is for processing and lower one is for transmission. In this particular webinar, the different applications that we are going to see of the DSP are control applications, communication, speech and audio, image processing, machine learning and data science, biomedical applications, and some future applications that we are going to see in the coming future. So first we can start with the control applications. Mainly the control applications that DSP is coming to work in industrial automation and robotics. So here we can see that it is a fully automated industry which is performing the corresponding desired sequences of operations. Here you can see that even though if there is a manual intervention, it will be coming to around 4% or 5%. Rest of the job will be completely done by the robots. So this is the difference. If you are in our mind, when we're hearing about robot, we will just assume that the robot is having a shape of a human. It is not required as such. The industrial robots will be always having a structure like this. We can see another example. Here also you can see that it is meant for another application, which is actually a unit which is producing cars. Here also you can see robots are doing all the assembly and welding and painting. Everything is done by robots. Here also you can see that the shape of the robot is almost similar to the first example. And this is the picture in our mind, that is a robot having the same shape of a human. This was the recent robot which is being developed for hand sanitation of people who is getting into the industry. So it will do the temperature checking of the people and will tell that if the temperature is high or the temperature is normal. The temperature is normal, it will provide the hand sanitizer such that the entry people can wash their hands and get into it. So it is also a fully automated robot used in industry. This is another industry which is used in that's another example of an industry which is doing the filling of any soft drinks. And this is the general representation of general prototype of an robot which is used in industry. We can also develop small prototypes like this. It is having only all the 360-degree of rotation. It is used for picking and placing with generally 0.001, that is 99.99% of precision. And this is another example, which is the robot is doing welding applications. It is a snapshot from the ABB lab. Another control application that we can tell is driverless car. This is actually the future, the coming future. And the research study shows that maximum within 10 years, almost everyone will be driving a driverless car. So in driverless car, we'll be having a video cam at the front end, and we'll be having a camera at the rear end. The global position system will be implemented in the car. And at the top, you can see that it is not a radar, it is a LiDAR, which is light detection and used for light detection and ranging. And at the front and at the back, we'll be having radar sensors, and there will be odometry sensors will be implemented in that. Ultrasonic sensors will be there. So throughout the body of the car, we'll be having a lot of sensors which will help for self-driving. And the main thing is that there will be a central computer which is monitoring all these output from the sensors, and which help the car for safer and better driving. And second application which we are having is a communication. In communication, mainly we know that it is used for transmission of information signal from telephone lines, modern technology, mobile phones, etc. And another example is can be used for the encoding and the decoding of the information sent over a physical channel. And if you are comparing an analog and digital communication, analog signal also we know that it is propagated over, it can be propagated over wire, space, optical fiber, etc. But if you're looking at the speech bandwidth, it is only extending from 100 Hz to 7 kHz. And if you are using the same analog communication method for video transmission, the maximum bandwidth that we can obtain is only 4 MHz. But if you are using a digital signal, the bandwidth becomes almost unlimited. And that the second advantage is that the total usage will be very very limited, in the sense we will be transmitting it as pulses. So if you are transmitting a digital signal, we'll be transmitting either a 1 or a 0. And to differentiate between a 1 and a 0, if you are transmitting a 1, you can use a high pulse. And if you are transmitting a 0, there is no need to transmit anything. So we'll be making use of the digital channel only if you are transmitting a 1. And if you are transmitting a 0, there is no need to transmit anything through the channel. So this makes digital communication more efficient or more effective. Now, the advantages of digital transmission, first one is we can make use of digital technology. As we all know, there are a lot of LSA and VLSA technologies which are developing, and due to the development, the cost and the size of the circuitry is getting reduced. So this will make digital communication more attractive. Second one is data integrity, because the effect of noises will be very, very less, and we can transmit over long distances making use of repeaters. Third one is increased capacity that I have already mentioned you, because the bandwidth becomes very, very huge compared to the analog communication. And the last one is very, very important, which is security. In analog, if you are making use of analog communication, we can't make use of any encryption technologies. But if you are making use of digital transmission, we can go for many encryption standards, so that only the receiver will be able to decrypt the signal, and hacking methods and everything are very, very less compared to the analog communication method. Another example that we can tell in the case of communication is radar and sonar. Radar is used for used in normal terrains, and sonars are used underwater. This can be used for tracking any moving objects, or it can be used for finding any resources inside the seabed. For example, if you have to find any area which is having an oil content in that, if there is any area in which we can do gold mining, etc. So this can be done with the help of radar and sonar. Now coming to the another application, which is biometric, which is very, very common right now. Biometrics is actually used for identifying a person. For identifying a person, we are making use of any of the physical characterization. The physical characters that we are generally popularly using right now is fingerprint. For example, right now, if almost all the smartphones are having an inbuilt fingerprint sensor in that. It will be available in the below the screen, or it may be available in the rear side of that. So this is actually meant for security. And the second biometric recognition that we can use is face recognition. This face recognition is also available in the smartphones right now. If we used to watch Hollywood movies and all, around 10 to 15 years, we can see only face recognition methods, all these things in Hollywood movies. But right now, all these are available in our hand tips. And the third one is iris recognition. Iris recognition in Apple devices, they are actually making use of iris recognition, because even though the fingerprints and face detection, etc., are it provides majority of the safe security, but that can be forged. For example, fingerprint can be forged, and face recognition also. If we are having an identical twins, both the faces will be recognized as the same. So, but in the case of an iris, it is the structure of the iris remains. It can be duplicated also. So iris recognition, the security is maximum for iris recognition, but in our normal applications and all, fingerprint and face detection is more than enough. Since fingerprint recognition is more common, we can just see some points on that, because this is a popular biometric authentication method used right now in our real applications. Fingerprints always is a pattern of ridges and valleys. You can see it's a small figure there. It is showing the ridges and it is showing the valleys. The advantage is that the ridges and the way in which ridges and valleys are actually we are having in a particular finger of a person will be entirely different from the case of another's, because no person will be having the same fingerprint configuration as another person. So the ridges is having characteristics called minutiae, which are the ridge ending and ridge bifurcation. In fingerprint recognition, we are extracting that details. The ridge ending is defined as the point where the ridge ends abruptly, and ridge bifurcation is defined as the point where the ridge forks into branch ridges. So these points are actually used to identify the fingerprint of one person to another person. So in a nutshell, fingerprint recognition refers to the method of verifying the match between two human fingerprints. Now coming to the next application, which is actually speech. In this particular webinar, we will be mainly focusing on some applications of speech, like first one is noise reduction, second one is speech recognition, third one is artificial speech synthesis, and speech enhancement. So noise reduction means reducing the background noise and to filter out a particular noise. Second one is speech recognition. Speech recognition means recognize a particular speech or differentiate the speech of more than one person. Artificial speech synthesis means if you're having a text, text can be converted into a speech, and if you are having a speech, that can be converted into a text. And speech enhancement means removal of the unwanted noise and echo and making the speech more and more audible and better. We can see one by one. First one is speech recognition. So speech recognition basically means talking to a computer, and the computer should be able to recognize that what we are actually talking in that. So in the block diagram, you can see that one person is actually speaking. That speech is actually taken by a microphone, and it is given to a computer, and the computer will be doing all the processing. So this process fundamentally functions as a pipeline that converts PCM digital audio from a sound card into a recognized speech. We can see some examples in that. First one is natural language processing. Natural language processing, as we all know, there are a lot of languages throughout our world, and the natural language processing should be able to recognize the corresponding language that we are talking about, whether it is Chinese or Malayalam or English or Hindi. And depending on that, since it is already the processor is being trained, it will be able to convert the speech into the corresponding text. So here, this application makes use of speech recognition. And second one is the voice recognition. In that, generally we'll be having an analog audio that will be converted into digital using ADC. We are converting that into digital, and we'll be getting a lot of data in that. From that data, we'll be matching any particular pattern, and from that particular pattern, if I am telling the things like telling a word like hi, it has to recognize that I am telling hi. So there will be already it will be matching with a lot of pre-trained terms in that, and when my hi and the already trained hi we are having a match, the corresponding system will be able to understand that I am uttering a word called hi. For the best example for that is the things that we are using for home automation. That is, we are having Amazon Alexa and Apple Siri, Microsoft Cortana, etc., etc. So this is it is actually interacting with the person. If I am telling that hello Google in that, it will automatically lit up. And if I am asking it that, so what's the current temperature in Kochi, it will search. It will make use of the Google search, and it will revert back that the temperature right now in city is 32 degrees Celsius. So this is the another application of speech recognition. And what is another advantage over here is that we can completely make our home smart using this type of applications. I will come to it in later. Now, second application of speech is actually text to speech. In text to speech, a simple block diagram is shown over here. We'll be giving a text input into that device. There will be a linguistic front end for that. So the linguistic front end, what it will do is it will make depending on the linguistic of that, it will be doing all the all the processing, and we'll be having an acoustic model and we'll be having a prosody model. It is modeled using the speaker embedding, language embedding, and style embedding. And at the end, we'll be having a neural network based vocoder, which will be giving a corresponding audio file. So when we are giving a text as the input, that I am typing HAI, it will be, if it is given as the input to that text to speech converter, it will utter the word hi. So in our phones itself, we are having inbuilt text to speech using Google search engine. I also know that many have used the application also, and a lot of Android applications are available, like Google text to speech. Say another one is a clipboard manager, and at voice aloud reader. So all these are the inbuilt applications in Android for text to speech. Now, next application is speech to text. A simple block diagram is shown. We are giving a raw audio. From the raw audio, we'll be extracting the features using spectrogram, and we'll be giving that input into an acoustic model. That acoustic model will be generally based on any neural networks. And from the learning of the neural network output, we are giving that output into a language model that language model will be actually giving the output depending upon which language we are giving the audio. So here also we are having a lot of applications. That is the Google search we are having in our Android phone. We are having a Google search. We just tap the mic button, and if we are uttering anything, that will be converted into Google search. That is a speech to text application. If we have tried in Google Documents also, there is an inbuilt mic in that. If you are switching on the mic and if you are telling the words and sentences, the Google Doc will convert that speech into text. All these are powered using Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. There are a lot of other applications also. Third application of speech is speech enhancement. In speech enhancement, you can see that the guy in purple is trying to communicate the guy in the red, but there are a lot of noises due to traffic or any other crowd or something. So I have to enhance the speech. I have to remove all the noises, and I have to give that input into the communication channel so that after enhancing, the receiver will be able to understand what the transmitter is communicating. So speech enhancement aims to improve the speech quality by various algorithms. It is mainly concentrating on clarity and intelligibility, pleasantness, compatibility with other speech methods also. It actually removes the background noise and it also suppresses the echo. And it always ensure that it is compatible with all the other speech processing methods. Now coming to the another level, which is before going into the next, that is two-dimensional data, which is image. I just want to summarize compression. What do you mean by compression? So generally, I'll be telling about what do you mean by multimedia compression. So compression means if you're having a data with you, you are reducing the size of that. Why we are reducing the size is that if the size is not reduced, it will take a lot of time for transmission. It will consume a lot of space for storage. And the other thing is that we can compress multimedia data because the human sensors are not that accurate in the case of compared to the computers. So even though the quality of the speech or quality of the image or the quality of the video is even little bit reduced, our eyes or ears will not be able to differentiate that. So in multimedia, the first multimedia thing is an audio. So a lot of compression standards are available: MP3, AC3, ATTRACK, AAC, WMA, etc. And as you all know, MP3 is the most possible audio compression standard that we have. And if you are taking a second multimedia, which is image, there are a lot of standards: GIF, JPEG, TIFF, etc. In that, as we all know, JPEG is the most widely accepted compression standard. And the third most popular multimedia is video. The compression standards for video that we are using is MPEG-4, H.264, AVC, etc. And this shows an image. In the left side, you can see an original image, which is 824 kilobyte. If I am giving a 50% compression in that, the size reduced to 76 kilobyte. That is, I am able to do a 10% compression in that. So we won't be able to differentiate that two images. But if I am increasing the compression to 80%, the size reduces to 38. If you can look into that black shaded area, you can see a lot of squares. That is actually losses, and that are called blocking artifacts. So we have to also always make sure that if you are employing a compression, it should not be completely visible to the user that the image is or the audio is or the video is compressed. So this is a simple review on the multimedia compression. Now we are moving into the image processing, which is having wide applications. So we'll be discussing more applications on image processing and its different fields. Now, from the name itself, it is clear that image processing means we are doing some operations on that image such that we are getting an enhanced image, or in other words, we are able to extract the features of the image so that we will be able to do some kind of operation from that, or we'll be able to extract some information from that. So in image processing, the input will be an image, the output will either be an image or output will be the characteristics or features associated with that image. Now coming to the key stages in image processing: image acquisition, which is acquiring an image. Image enhancement means enhancing the image quality. Image restoration means if it is deteriorated, we can restore the image. Then morphological processing, we are doing some type of processing in that. Segmentation means taking a part from that image. Object recognition means from the image we are detecting different objects. Representation and description means we are taking some contours from the image. Image compression, as we already dealt with that, it will be reducing the size of the image. And finally, we can have color image processing. We are going to deal with one by one. First, we can do what we can see what do you mean by image acquisition. For image acquisition, we require a device for capturing the image, and we all know the device that we are using is a camera. In camera, we are having sensors, which are photo sensors, which will convert the light incident on that into the corresponding voltages or the corresponding currents. So the sensors means it's a transducer, which is a photo transducer, which converts light into the corresponding values. And the value will be depending upon the light intensity. If the light intensity is very high, the sensor output will be very high. And if the light intensity is very low, the sensor output will be very low. And second stage is image enhancement. Image enhancement means if the captured image that we are having is not at par to the visibility, we can enhance it. So a simple example is shown over here. On the left-hand side, you can see an image which is not that clear. And the right-hand side, we can see an enhanced image. And the third stage is we can have is image restoration. Image restoration means the image is actually deformed, or it is the information is lost from that. So using many image restoration methods, we can restore the image. So the two images are shown. The top image is the image which has to be restored and is given as the input. And in the lower stage, we are having the restored image. Third one is morphological processing. Morphological processing means we are doing some operation on the image. Then the operation will be mainly filtering operation. If we have to remove, if the image is having a lot of noise, as we all know, noise is a high frequency thing. So if we are passing the image through a low pass filter, all the noises will be removed. Similarly, if we have to get the edges of an image, the edges are frequencies. And if we want to detect the edges, we have to pass the image through a high pass filter. So all these type of processing are generally called morphological processing. And the thing is that how we are doing the filtering operation is that we are passing the image through a mask. That mask is actually the impulse response of the filter. And for each type of operation, there are standard masks available, or we can develop your own mask. And if you are passing the image through that filter, or if you are doing that masking operation, we will be getting the desired output. So a lot of processing can be done in an image. We cannot cover all those things in that. That's the reason why I stick on with low pass filtering and high pass filtering. And the next one is segmentation. Segmentation means we have to take a particular area from the image. That is, as we all know, for every image, you will be having a foreground and you will be having a background. In the topper image, you can see that this is an image of a horse. So if you want to recognize that whether you are having a horse in that image, you will be able to segment that particular portion of the image. So in image segmentation, we are creating mask. It is entirely different from the mask used in morphological processing. In morphological processing, the masks are standard masks. But in segmentation, depending upon the image or depending upon the object in the image, the mask has to be adaptive. So in segmentation, we are creating a mask of the objects that we want to detect from that. In the lower image, you can see if I want to detect all the living things from that, you can see there are 4 to 5 human beings in that. There is a dog in that. So all those has to be extracted. So in the right-hand side, we are having the mask, and the left-hand side is the corresponding image. So if we are putting the mask on top of that image, we will be able to extract only the foreground from the background. So this is the basic thing which is doing in object recognition. So we can see what do you mean by object recognition. A simple image will be given to you. This can be extended to video also, that I will show you in the coming slides. If I'm having a video in that, from that video, you will be able to understand what all things are in that. So it is showing that we are having a building in that, a lot of traffic signs are there. We can see a part of the sky. We can see a lot of pedestrians moving in that. A crosswalk is also there. Since we are having a crosswalk, there is a road there. And we can see that there's a part of the car also. So in object recognition, if you are giving an input image, from the image, it will be giving me which all things are present in that image. The same thing if I'm giving a video as the input, from that video, we'll be able to understand what all quantities are there in that video. Now coming to the representation and description, this is very important that after we are doing the segmentation, you should be able to differentiate between the foreground and the background. So that is done using the help of the description. You can see that the squares are showing the total image, and from that lot of dots are showing in that. That separates or that creates a mask which separates the foreground from the background. So this activity, so using 8-bit, we can go only up to 255. So in monochrome image, if the value is 255, it is be considered as a white, and if it is 0, it is considered as a black. And in between any value, we'll be considering it as a any gray shade. But in the case of color image, the same image will be having three different windows. One will be dedicated for the red, one will be dedicated to green, and one will be dedicated to blue. If for any particular pixel, if the red value is 255, green is 0, and blue is 0, that will be considered as a red pixel. If the red is 0, green is 0, and blue is 255, it is considered as a pure blue pixel. And depending upon the R, G, and V values, we'll be getting a combination of these three. We all know these three are the primary colors. So if you're having a monochrome image using color image processing, that monochrome image can be converted into an color image. These are the different key stages in image processing. Now we are coming to the applications of image processing. The first application that we are having is computer vision. Computer vision is a study of the analysis of pictures and videos in order to achieve results similar to those done as the humans. So instead of humans, we'll be having computers which is going through the pictures and giving you the corresponding perception of that. So we are having a camera, we are giving the scene as the input. The output will be an image, is given as the input to the computer, and we'll be having the corresponding perception from that. So the computer's significance of computer vision. Using computer vision, you can ensure safety because manual driving can create accidents. But if the self-driving cars are accurate, there won't be any safety issues in that. Second application is with respect to health. If you're having a lot of images with us, the doctors are giving you the corresponding findings. So if you're having the computer vision is being implemented, we'll be getting better results. Third one is security. If a lot of cameras are implemented in the supermarkets and all, if we can detect any theft activity, if any activities considered as a theft activity, we can automatically give alarms and all. And we can have comfort. We have already seen that in Trivandrum itself, we are having a hotel where the robots are the waiters. So we can go, that can also be implemented in that. We can go for any fun activities. We can go for access. We can restrict the access. We can give the access. All these are possible with respect to computer vision. Now coming to the emerging and very future-changing application of or area of image processing, which is called machine learning. That is, we are making a machine to learn and identify objects. For simply, if you are showing a machine different types of apples, and at the end, I am showing something and asking the machine that is it an apple or not. So the machine will be able to give an answer. It is a yes or it is a no. So this is the main emerging trend or the technology right now. We are going to deal it in detail because this is going to change the future. So machine learning develops systems that automatically adapt and customize themselves to individual users. We can have personalized news or mail filters. Even if you're going for, we can see that if you're using any searching applications, so a lot of suggestions will automatically come. If I have searched in Amazon that I require a new TV, I have searched in Amazon for a TV. So, and I have stopped the search. from that day onwards, if I am going for any other particular search, I will come as a recommendation that say you can go through these TVs which are new and say there is an offer for the TV, etc. So that is automatically done using machine learning, that it will give me suggestions according to my taste or my requirement. It is used to discover knowledge from the large databases. So if you want to do some market analysis, so this can be done using machine learning, which will take very less time compared to learning using humans. This ability to mimic human and replace certain monotonous tasks. For example, the reception of any hospital or any company can be fully automated using machine learning. So if a call is automatically arriving, using machine learning, we'll be able to reroute into different departments or give an feedback back to the caller depending upon his query. So when machine learning is implemented, lot of repeated jobs will be lost. For example, if the autonomous car or self-driving car is being implemented, there won't be any use of drivers. So the job of the drivers is completely replaced. But the study shows that even if by the implement of machine learning or artificial intelligence, if the amount of job loss is calculated as 30 million, but machine learning will give you 130 billion jobs. So that is the future of machine learning. It will be help to develop systems that are too difficult and too expensive. On all these activities, you can go for machine learning. So simply what machine learning is doing, we are having a training data. So as I have already told, if I have to train a machine, the machine data depends upon my requirement. So the training data is given and I'm having a learning algorithm. Using the training data and learning algorithm, it will, the system will be automatically a trained machine. And if I'm giving a query to that trained machine, it will give me an answer. You can see a simple example. I'm giving an input raw data, which is actually apples, which is given as to an algorithm. That algorithm will be mainly depending upon artificial neural network or convolutional neural networks. So we'll be having a supervisor. The supervisor will be handling the training data set, and the supervisor will be training that using the desired output. And the model will be trained and it is ready for processing. So after the model is being trained, if I'm giving an input, the model will be giving you an output depending upon its training. So it is, if it is trained using apples, and if I am showing any input and I'm querying that it is an apple or not an apple, it will give you an output. So I have to show, watching a video, we are able to spot different people's, objects, scenes, any details in that, etc. So I'm showing you a frame in that. If I am able to give this frame as an input to the machine should be able to understand what all objects are present in that, and it will give me an output like this. So each object will be marked in a square, and below the square it will show me what is that thing actually. So you can see that it has detected notebook, it has detected specs, it has detected laptop, it has detected that in a cup I am having a coffee, and there is an iPhone in that. So this is the mastery of object recognition. So a scene is given to that. So what object recognition involved is that it will be able to detect whether they are people. It is able to verify that is it a lamp. It is able to identify that is it a palace. It is able to categorize different objects: mountain, building, street lamp, vendors, people, banners are there, trees, etc. So another application of object recognition is car number plate recognition, which is very common right now. We'll be having a booth. In front of the booth, if we are parking our car, a camera will actually capture the number plate area of our car, and it will be reading the corresponding number of the car, and we'll be able to get the information about the registration, owner of the car, etc. etc. So a simple flow chart block or a block diagram showing the car number plate recognition on over here. We require image acquisition. As we already know, image acquisition means capturing the image. Second, we require image processing. That is, we want to segment a particular number plate area, and it will be given to the character segmentation. The number plate, if I'm having KL7BD 5512, it will be, we have to segment the characters from that, and I have to recognize that which are the numbers in that. AL7, BD, 5512 has to be in that. This character recognition is being done using a training. For that training, we'll be having a character database, and we are having a character and a training model using neural network. If I'm doing that, if I'm giving that character input to that, the training network will be giving me which all are the characters present in that. Then the characters are validated, and finally I'm getting the number plate in that, and I'm using my database. I am searching in that, and I'll be getting the registration validation of it. So this is another application. And another application of machine learning is called pattern recognition. In pattern recognition, it is used to study how the machine will be able to observe the environment, learn to distinguish patterns of interest, make sound and reasonable decisions about the categories. So you can see that in details. So before moving to pattern recognition, what do you mean by a pattern? So we can, a lot of patterns I have shown over here. There are fingerprints are there, a lot of other patterns are there, waveforms are there, phases are there, some iris are there, some writings are there, some say two-dimensional plots are there. So anything can be considered as a pattern, and this pattern has to be recognized. So pattern classes means it's a set of patterns having common attributes. So here you can see that A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H is given down there. That is actually the inputs of our alphabets. But you can see that even if each are having a different representing different pattern, that all will come in a single category. And below you can see the numbers also. The numbers will be coming into another class category. And in that right hand side, I have shown an audio clip. Audio clip I can show only using that using a plot. In the initial stage, you can see that has to be recognized as a speech. After recognizing that speech, you can segment that, and you can recognize who is the speaker, and you can recognize what he have already uttered. And after that, in the second stage, you can see that nothing is in the graph, so that represents a silence. So that has to be recognized as a silence, and nothing has to be done in that. In the third part, you can see that it is a noise. So it has to be recognized as a noise, and we has to do noise identification, noise verification, and we can find that what type of noises are actually affecting my speech. And then the last part, you can see that it's entirely different from the first part. First part is showing a graph of a speech, and last part is showing the graph of a music. So it can be clearly differentiate, the patterns can be clearly differentiated. So the last part I can consider as a music, and I can do any type of activities. I can do music transcription. I can do, say, any type of audio processing in that. I can identify what type of music is that, whether it is coming in a pop or a rap or a classical or anything. Or I can also search and find the title of the music, the author, the category, etc. So this is the basic of pattern recognition. In pattern recognition, we are having two phases. First one is the training or learning, and second one is detection. In training or learning, as we have already seen, a lot of different types of patterns will be given to the input. He will be trained to that. That is, the system will be trained to that. He will be able to extract the features. He will be able to classify that. And finally, he is ready for detection. And in the detection phase, we are giving different inputs, and depending upon the input, he should give me results. And finally, we are classifying the efficiency of that. If the efficiency is very high, then my model is ready. Now, in pattern recognition, the machine learning can be done in three ways. First phase is called a supervised learning. In supervised learning, I am showing different apples to the machine, and I am telling that this is an apple. And I am showing different types of apple, and all these being labeled as apple by me, so that the machine understands that these are apples. Then I am showing different types of mangoes. When I am showing a mango, I am telling that it is a mango. I am showing different 100 varieties of mango, etc., etc. So I am making the system learn with a supervision. So I am showing an image, I am labeling it as an apple or a mango or a guava. Second one is an unsupervised learning. In unsupervised learning, I am simply only giving images to that. I am not labeling it, and I am making the system to learn by itself. So this type of learning by the system, learning done by the system will be entirely different by the learning method which is being done in supervised learning. And the third one is reinforced learning. In reinforced learning, it will be in between the supervised learning and unsupervised learning. It is not desired, category is given by the teacher, but a feedback is given after every decision is made by the system. That is, whether this decision is right or whether the decision is wrong. That is, I am giving an apple to that. If it is labeling it as a mango, I will be telling that you are wrong. I won't be telling that it is an apple. So these are the three types of learning in pattern recognition. So I'll be showing you an example. This is a supervised learning. So I am having a set of data. In set of data, it is actually can be classified into four. That is, I'm having small triangles, I'm having large triangles. I'm having small circles, I'm having large circles. I am having triangles that are yellow, I am having triangles that are blue. I'm having circles that are yellow, I am having circles that are blue. So if I am training it to classify it as a triangle and circles, you can left hand side you can see that there are triangles which are yellow and blue, and there are circles that are yellow and blue. So I am training it to classify it as triangles and circles. If I want to classify it depending upon the color, I'll be classifying it as whether it is a yellow and whether it is a blue. So at the end, you can see that in the top, we are having all blue objects, which comprises both of triangles and circles. And in the bottom, you are having yellow objects, which are also triangles and circles. So here the machine is not learning by itself. I am making the machine to learn. I am making the machine to classify according to my need. This data set will be, if this data set is given to an unsupervised learning, it will be modeling in another way. You can see that this is the way I am giving some training set which is unlabeled. Unlabeled means I am not specifying the color, I am not specifying the type. So that it is classifying depending upon its own requirement. So in the left hand side, you can see that it is classified according to the type of the object. In the second, it is classified depending upon the size of the object, and in the third, it is classified depending upon the color of the object. This is automatically being done, not being trained. So this is the simple block diagram representation of the pattern recognition. First, we have to acquire the data. That is, we have to take the images. Then we have to do the pre-processing. In pre-processing, we are removing the noise, we are segmenting it, etc., etc. And in the third process, we are going for a feature extraction. That is, we are extracting the features, and we are before doing the labeling. And finally, we are doing the here we are doing the classification, classifying it as an apple or an orange or a triangle or a circle or a yellow or a blue, etc. And finally, we are having a post-processing where we are making the decision. So this is the overview of pattern recognition. Now you can see some applications of pattern recognition. Here you can see a supermarket, and the lady is actually scanning there. So in our supermarkets, we have seen that the billing is done depending upon the scanning of the barcode. For every product, we'll be having a barcode, and we'll be having a database for the barcode. So this matching is being done, and the product is being added into the bill. But here, the difference is that there is no barcode. When I'm showing an image, we can see that the lady is actually showing an orange. If an orange is being shown, the system should be able to understand that it is an orange, and the billing is being done as such. This can be extended to anything. That is, I am showing, say for example, if I am showing an apple, it should detect it as an apple. So if this is being implemented, the barcode concept will be completely being gone, because there is no need for a barcode, because the system itself is able to understand what you are actually showing your system. Is it an apple, or say, is it a guava? Now we are coming to the same object recognition in the case of an video. This is the a snapshot of the video object recognition patented by Google, and this is being going to launch within near future in the case of a YouTube. So if you are actually viewing a YouTube video, if we want to see what all objects are there, Google will give you another option, and Google itself will label it which all things are there. For in that screenshot, you can see that there is a man, there is a pole, there is a car, etc., etc. Now, the application, another application of this object recognition is a Google Glass. This has been launched by Google 3 years before, but not became so popular because of the cost of that. So in front, there will be a camera. You can see a dark circle in that. That is an inbuilt camera in that. So what all things the person who is wearing the glass is seeing, the camera also will see the same thing and will give the corresponding feedback, or it will automatically recognize what all things we have already seen. Another example is a self-parking car. which is a small application corresponding to the self-driving car. So even though self-driving car is not so popular, parking car is very, very popular. Even say the Passat, as you have seen, the Volkswagen Passat is all automatically having an automatic parking, inbuilt automatic parking in that. So this is another application. Now coming to the last application, which is biological signal processing. In biological signal processing, we are analyzing the biomedical signals. We are able to help the doctors to diagnose it. We will help to monitor the patients. We can provide preventive health care. We can develop artificial organs, etc., etc. So the examples are brain EEG signals, ECG signals, say MRI, X-ray, etc., etc. We can I'll just show you a glance of that. There's no time to deal in detail. So the applications are hearing aid. These applications are hearing aid, EEG, ECG, and MRI. We are going to see. Hearing aid, we are having analog hearing aids, but it is being switched into digital hearing aid. EEG means we are taking, it is electroencephalogram. We are taking the brain signals. So you can see that a lot of sensors are actually placed on our head, and we are taking the signals. ECG means electrocardiogram. We are finding the heart rate, heartbeat of that. And MRIs can also, So the hearing aid, the sound will be picked by the microphone, and we are converting into electric signal, and finally we are digitizing it. So what all process we have to do in that? So digital signal is filtered in such a way that we will be amplifying only that frequency band where the corresponding patient's ear is not audible to. All the other he is able to get, but we will be selecting only that particular frequency. The other thing that we can do is that we should do the amplitude compression, because if the signal that we are getting is having a very high amplitude, that may then damage his ear. So we should employ audio compression in that. And finally, there will be a digital to analog converter, which will be converting the acquired signal back into analog, and the analog signal is being given to the inputted to the ear of the corresponding person. So digital hearing aids are there. Due to the digital hearing aids, you can see that the different types of hearing mechanism we are having. So we are able to miniaturize that, so that no one will be able to understand that whether a hearing aid is placed in the ear. This is due to the digitization or the due to the digital signal processing. So this is EEG, electroencephalogram. There are a lot of electrodes are placed in the brain, and we are having 5 classification of signals, which are called gamma, which is called beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Depending upon the nature or the shape of the signal, the doctors are able to diagnose and tell that whether there is any deviation from the normal signal, or there is any problem related to brain, etc. So next one is an MRI signal, real-time MRI signal, which is implemented using digital signal processing technology. This system enables to take 20 images per second. So this is the MRI structure that we are having. You can see that there is an audio frequency coil in that, which is actually producing the radio frequency. There are gradient coils also there. We are having electromagnets in there. There is a place for the patient to be placed in that. So, so due to the time limitation, I am actually skipping the working of the MRI. And coming to the last application, which is patient monitoring, which is telemonitoring. This is the future of that. There is no need for any person to go to the hospital for every time, because there is a bedridden patient. He can be monitored from the home itself. So he is called a remote patient, along with the accessories which is being connected to the person. The data collected, that is ECG or the temperature or the blood pressure, all the real-time values collected from the patient will be sent to the medical management system, or it will be automatically saved in the database, so that there is no need for a person to be always placed side of the patient. So if there is any variation of the received data or the collected data from the normal data, we can alarm the medical advisors, and the automatic emergency, we can give an SMS to the ambulance service and go to the corresponding home, collect the patient and come to the hospital. So this is a fully automated patient monitoring system. Now I will just go through 5 or 6 future applications, and I will just wind up the session. The first main application is M2M communication, which is machine-to-machine communication, which is also called as Internet of Things or IoT. In IoT, each and everything will be having an IP, so that each and every device can communicate with any other device. So everything will be smart. So vehicles will be smart, buildings will be smart, say petrol pumps will be smart, everything will be smart. So all these will can be considered as machines. So even a building can be considered as a machine, and one building can communicate with another building. So machine to machine communication is possible. This is the coming future of application of signal processing. Second one is with respect to the displays. As we all know, there are displays called organic LED display, which is called OLED. Then we are having AMOLED displays, which is active matrix LED. A lot of research is being happening over here, so that the AMOLED displays is regularly costly, but the clarity is very high. So the display is more going on in such a way that how can we keep the clarity as such, and we can reduce the display in that. So the Samsung is the first company to come up with AMOLED. Even in the Samsung S3 phone, which launched in 2010, I think, they were having AMOLEDs. Now coming to the third one is social signal processing. In social signal processing, we are actually detecting the cues. So what do you mean by cues is that how to, using the cues, we will be able to detect what the person is able to communicate to us. For example, if he's showing a high gesture using his hand, we should be able to understand that he is giving me a hi, and I have to record that. So the cues may be the face and head behavior, vocal behavior, gestures and postures, appearances, space, etc. So this cue, we will be able to show the same thing. We'll be able to give the function, or we'll be able to respond into that if we are able to find the cue. So this queue can be, how this queue can be recorded and transmitted. This is the future of signal processing. So we'll be having an automatic detection of queue system and automatic interpretation of the queues, depending on the queue, what actually the person intended. This can be done using system. And finally, we can synthesis, that is automatic generation of the queues can also be done, and that can be used to interact with the users. So this is the next coming future of signal processing. And the fourth one is green signal processing. That is, how can we make use of signal processing for energy harvesting? So in energy harvesting, a lot of wireless sensor networks can be implemented. And this can be, using this wireless sensor network, we'll be able to control the energy loss, so that the energy harvesting can be done in a better way. And the fifth one is a smart signal processing. How can we make your home completely smart? So a simple example is given over there. We will be always having a sensor hub. So home security system can be implemented, whether anyone is getting into our house or not. Then virtual reality, which is coming another future of signal processing, that can also be done over there. Then all appliances can be made smart. We'll be having a smartphone in that. We'll be having a smart home assistants like Amazon Echo. We'll be having, say, wireless headset will be there, smart TVs will be there. Then there won't be any remote control. Tablet can be converted into remote control. So everything is getting into a smart. And finally, I want to show you one more future application, which is 3D signal processing. In 3D signal processing, 3D video. So as we all know, the consumption of 3D electronic devices has been increased marvelously in the last 5 years. So 3D TV is going to be more popular. And also we are having a 3D audio. So you may also have seen heard some examples of 3D audios. And another future of 3D signal processing is 3D printing. And last one which we can have is called 3D projections, which may be 3D holographic projections. That we can project a person in that, and we can communicate with that. We have already seen that Indian movie and all, where it is actually communicating with the person we can see and communicate a person in that. And using that virtual reality concept and all, if you are used to watch the 24 channel by Srikantan Nair also, there you can see that even if the person is not present in the 24 channel studio, we will see that the person is actually in that studio. So these are all the coming futures of signal processing. So by this, I just want to, there are a lot of other applications in that. I just compressed it to cover the maximum things in 1 hour. So I don't know how much of the information I was able to communicate with you. And anyway, thank you for patiently hearing that. So now we can have any interactions. You can ask some questions. If I am able to answer the questions, I will answer it right now, or I will send it into chat.
Dear participants, if you have any queries, you can ask to our resource person now, or you can put in as a message in the chat box.
So if there is any question, you please unmute your mic and you can question.
Sir, there are two questions in the chat. One question is, which one is the most secure biometric measurement? The question is from Christy Jacqueline.
Okay, Christy, the most secure measurement is it's always the iris. The thing is that you won't be able to mimic it. For example, fingerprint can be easily being mimicked because you can collect the fingerprint of any other person, and you can actually 3D print the same using any transparent method. You can actually keep it on our own finger, and if you are keeping it, and if you are giving to the biometric sensor, the probability of sensing it as the original person is very high. But in the case of an iris, this cannot be done. The reason is that you won't be able to replace my iris with any other iris. If it has to be done, it has to be made permanent. So the thing is that iris recognition is the most secure. So any other questions?
Sir, one more question in the chat is that, is mask and structural element are same? The question is from Sifna Shajan.
Mask and?
Structural elements are same. Is mask and structural elements?
Masking is actually done for in segmentation, actually for separating your foreground and your background. The mask has to be adaptive because from one picture to the second picture, the foreground and background may be different. So the mask has to be changed as per our image. So that is actually what you mean by a mask. So that will be more clear if you are going through any image segmentation methods. It will be more clear.
I think, sir, there is one more question from Christy Jacqueline. What happens if a person ages? What about iris?
Even though my skin or my little bit of my facial construction, etc., may change, the iris of a person will remain same till from birth. Maybe if he is 70 years old or 75 years old, the iris, the characteristics of the iris will always remain the same. So that's the reason why, if we want to have very high security, we won't be going for biometric or we won't be going for face. We will always go for iris. For example, if you're having an identical twin, the face recognition algorithm may treat both as the same, but an iris recognition algorithm won't be treating both as the same.
Okay. Next question from Ashwin Shiju. What type of learning in pattern recognition is commonly used?
The generally used learning method is supervised learning because I want to detect a particular object, or I want to make my system to identify an apple. That is, if I am working in a fruit, my main input is a fruit. I have to teach the machine how an apple look like, how an orange look like, how a mango look like. So my data set is very limited. So I can go for supervised learning. In unsupervised learning, the main thing is that the machine has to learn by its own. So the amount of data that you have to give to the machine is enormous. But in supervised learning, since I am giving an input along with the label, that is, I am taking an apple, labeling it as an apple, and giving to the system. So the amount of data which has to be given to the system for its learning is less in supervised. But in unsupervised, the amount of data to be given is very huge. So generally, we will be always opting for supervised learning. Any other questions?
Any more questions? Participants can ask. I think there are no more questions. Agil sir, shall we wind up?
Yes, miss. You
Yes,
can wind up.
Okay. So, thank you, Sriraj sir, for spending your valuable time with us. On behalf of our department and each and